Welcome to Order Militarist Radio TV. We are again with Brother Alexis Bonello, and we are back on our new series update on terrorism around the world. Yesterday was just a taste of what we're going to get into today. Yesterday from May 10th by Raymond Abrams, how governments in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Pakistan, India are denying food and humanitarian necessities during this coronavirus. And today we pick up where we left off. Welcome, Brother Alexis.
Thank you, AJ. Always glad to be on Order Militaris Radio TV, opening up new horizons for independent Catholic media in the English-speaking world.
Oh, if you see the sticker behind me, that's on our mugs. You can actually buy the sticker itself. It's also on the iPhone case, the Samsung case, hoodie, and a t-shirt on our Order Militaris Radio store.
Okay, so our weekly report on terrorism around the world. This is a great program, AJ. I'm glad you started it because in Order Militaris Catholicus, this is our whole purpose for existence, doing what we can to prevent terrorism. We wish we could do a lot more. We're not big, wealthy people, little people, but the first thing that needs to happen is people need to know what's going on because the media has been censoring it. As soon as there was a reaction in the West against what ISIS was doing, because the media was reporting on it every day, the media decided just to cut it right out of the news cycle because they want the persecution to go on. They don't want a Christian reaction. And so that's why the program you're doing weekly is so important, and why I'm honored to be on it with you and discuss these horrible and continuous outrages against Christian peoples.
Yeah. Well, let's start right here at home in America with Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, so a lot of people thought that, well, I was guessing, though I didn't yet know anything, that when they started pulling down these Christian symbols, there must be a group of Muslims among them. Because who would pull down a Christian statue and destroy it? Okay, I mean, it's not something Hindus do. It's not something Buddhists do. There's not many Hindu and Buddhists in black neighborhoods. And so I guess there must be some Muslims involved in Muslim money, and maybe the Black Lives Matter is merely a front for an ISIS in the United States. So this report doesn't surprise me at all.
No. In the Capital Research Center group piece from last week, Tuesday night, it only mentions the connection to terrorist ties to a leading Black Lives Matter group. But then this morning, the floodgates opened by Gateway Pundit.
Yeah, it's a great article they did. Solomon Samuel Simone. You would think that's a Jewish name. It's not. He's black. He's a cool operator in the sense of he knows how to get money and power for himself. He's not poor. Let us say this is not a poor oppressed black. He has gotten more money in his lifetime than most white families have in 4 generations. Go ahead, AJ.
His nickname is Raz, or from Chaz or Chop. The people there made him the proclaimed warlord of Chaz, the multi-block area located in Seattle. Raz hates America but owns multiple guns, luxury automobiles, millions in real estate. More importantly, Raz is supported by the Islamic government in Dubai.
He owns a Telsa, a BMW, and a Jaguar XJ. I don't even know what a Jaguar XJ is, but I know Jaguar makes expensive cars. Telsa cars are very expensive, and a BMW, everyone knows. BMW might be the least expensive of those three. But, you know, one man doesn't need three cars. And I don't think he's married with kids, so.
Uh, he owns automatic weapons, but also 6 semi-automatic rifles, including an AR-15, AK-47, and a Uzi, and has armor-piercing bullets for these guns as well.
This report we're reading, we should thank the work of Yakov Applebaum, who did the research that Gateway Pundit used in this report.
Yeah.
So he looks like he's prepared for war. I mean, I thought in the US you couldn't own these kind of guns, or at least I thought the left was opposed to owning AR-15s and AK-47s. I don't think this guy's the Republican, so what's he doing with Republican guns?
Yeah.
I guess it's okay as long as you clutch a Quran and not a Bible.
Yeah. He also somehow received a grant for $82,000 from the city of Seattle to open his studio in a building he purchased with another loan.
Yeah, he owns an Raz fashion line, the Aurora Smoke Shop, a social club called The Spot, the Black Umbrella Corporation. I said this is why I say this guy's a real operator. Maybe he's getting the money legally, okay, but he's by no means an oppressed black person, okay? And, you know, why would he want to take over a neighborhood with guns and run a completely lawless situation? You wouldn't see it from his wealth, you know? So he's not your, you know, standard revolutionary. Then he's gotten the CNN to promote his image by reports. No, MSM advisor Oliver Dole gave him some coverage, and then Oliver Darcy, CNN, has helped him shape his image with videos. In one of these videos, he looks like any kind of rebel you'd see in Africa. I mean, he has like not standard camouflage pants. They're kind of like African artistic camouflage pants and coat. He's wearing a white t-shirt. It's like a gym t-shirt, and he has like his gold necklace with all kinds of trinkets on it. Then he has something like wrapped around his head, a multicolored black and colored kind of piece of cloth, kind of like a turban, like an Indian kind of turban in one of these photos. And well, he's sporting guns in all these photos. He's been spotted attending the Sheikh Zayed Mosque. I guess that's in Seattle. Oh yeah, he's involved. He was one of the signers or organizers of the manifesto entitled "Washington State, the First Black Muslim Independent State," and they promote that with a poster. Which, get this, everyone, it's a poster of George Washington, but he doesn't have white skin. His skin's painted that of an African, a dark-colored African. On his forehead, he's wearing a white tattoo of the Islamic crescent and star. And the poster is not only, you could say it's racist because it's denying the real race of George Washington. You could say it's very I hate America, but it's kind of the tricks you see among Marxists to trigger people because it's meant to be offensive, you know. If this guy really believed in black people, he'd put a picture of a black man up there, right? So why does he have to take a picture of George Washington and change the color of the skin? And, you know, the last I heard, though, blacks are an exceptionally small minority of Washington State. I think they're not even 10%. So why Washington should be a black state? Shouldn't you go down to Mississippi, which is like 65% black or 80% black, and make that the first black state? I mean, I don't know. So you can see that he's like, I think there's a lot of egoism, I would say, a lot of publicity, a lot of self-promotion in his approach to things.
Let's see there. In 2017, the Dubai government sponsoring and hosting this is anti-white and anti-productions. He stayed at the Amida Heritage Guest House. It looks like he also went to Mecca.
Yeah, which they wouldn't even let you in the area of where the Kaaba is kept unless you're a Muslim. So, so the chop zone in Seattle, which the media told you is Black Lives Matter, is really American ISIS. That's the impression I get, American ISIS. And wait till we find out what went on during those weekdays in which there was no police in that zone. I would not be surprised that there are a lot of evil went on, a lot of shenanigans. But this guy's been funded by the Democratic government of Seattle, who's given him these grants. Okay, and so here's another case. The Obama regime, Democrat. Okay, both sides of his family were slave owners and slave sellers. Funded ISIS in Syria that killed hundreds of thousands of Muslims and Christians who are whites. Let's talk about racism there. And that was a CIA operation. And now we have Black Lives Matter allowed to destroy the cities of America. And it turns out one of the chief leaders of them is a black radical Muslim. Okay, I'm not going to say he's a terrorist yet, because taking over part of a town isn't necessarily terrorism. Terrorism was when you attack people to get them change their politics. Like if he went around in the neighborhoods outside of the city and said, I'm going to kill anyone unless they vote me mayor, that would qualify as terrorism. But he's definitely radical because he wants to take over a portion of the United States. If any white person or Christian did this, he would be arrested on the spot. His bank accounts would be shut down. His assets would be seized. The National Guard would be called in, and he and all supporters would be arrested in 48 hours. And every media channel in the country would say, "Oh, evil Christian trying to force people to convert with guns."
Yeah. This isn't the first tie that's come out, folks. We learned about the Gateway Pundit about 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, just before we came on, another independent news source, news website, News Thud, has another tie of the Canadian Black Lives Matter chapter, which is also Islamist. She prays to Allah not to kill whites because she thinks all white people are subhuman.
Well, that's not very Islamic, because actually in the Islamic religion, whites are considered superior and blacks are considered subhuman. So these people don't even know the Quran. So maybe we'd call it anti-Quranic. So, but it sounds to me that they're more Marxist and they're just exploiting Islam as a cover for, or maybe just as a way of getting more supporters. There are a lot of Muslims in Canada because Canada has pretty much open immigration to the former British Commonwealth, but they're mostly from Bangladesh and India and Pakistan and I think Ceylon and countries like that. And this woman who leads Black Lives Matter in Canada, what's her name?
Yeah, let me. It's hard to pronounce. Let's see here. Yusra Kogali.
Kogali. Okay. So is this a coincidence now? Two prominent Black Lives Matter leaders are radical Muslims and racists and Marxists?
I think so. Then on Twitter, a video surfaced, which we won't play because, well, we don't have the bleeping technology to bleep out almost every other word.
With the bleeping, you mean the censoring technology? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Where they want, get this, folks. They are Islamic, but they also want a communist country.
Islamic communism. Communism isn't of itself like Marxist. Okay. And I'm trying to think, is there any Marxist? Well, Marxism is innately atheistic, so how does it mix with Islam, which is innately theistic? I think Islam would teach its members to oppose communism. But there's I think the only underlying constant in this Black Lives Matter group is that they are radicals and advocate violence and lawlessness. And if they wear any kind of mantle of a political ideology or a religion or ethnic cause, it's only to agitate people and create an excuse to practice crime.
Yep. You're listening to Order Terrorist Radio TV live on we are live on ordo-militaris.net. Please click on any of the show topics. Scroll down to the very bottom. You will see free will monthly subscription to Order Terrorist Radio TV. Then you see a blue-green button there. Make monthly pledge of support. Click it. Follow the links. And if you want to be part of the show, click the contact us page, and you'll see the studio number.
What number can they call in at during the show, AJ? What's that number?
It's +1 785 672 9560.
Okay, and we really appreciate call-ins. We've had a couple call-ins already. It was at DC and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're being listened to. And Ordo Militaris Radio TV is non-advertising. It's a non-commercial station. It's an apostolate AJ does as member of Ordo Militaris Catholicus, which is a Catholic association, international association of believers dedicated to defending Christians from being persecuted. And so we only can pay the expenses from our subscribers and those who give free will offerings. So I encourage you to support the radio station so that it can grow and fulfill its purpose of making these issues better known and informing the public about the true way Christians should react to terrorism and to political persecution.
Yeah. Like the small group of Catholics in Michigan. Great job, guys.
Oh yeah, there's guys with all the guns around the cross. Yeah, I'd love to know their names and have one of them call in and tell us what inspired them and how they're organized. That's the kind of group you need in every parish, in an inner city where there's threats going on. Okay, and good self-defense group, and that was what porters of old did to defend the church.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to
but
what?
Excuse me?
Oh, I was just saying, now we're going to a topic close to my heart, a part of what used to be France, Algeria, on persecuted Christians there from Gatestone Institute.
Yeah, it's really amazing what's going on here. So Algeria, for those who aren't so up on their geography, is that part of North Africa directly across the Mediterranean Sea to the south of the coast of France. It was a French colony from the mid-19th century. The French went down there and conquered it. And France ended up taking most of North and West Africa under their control. And it became independent after the Second World War. And if there's any civilization there in the sense of modern streets, roads, and infrastructure, the French were the ones that started it off by building it. And the French, while they owned it, gave freedom of worship to Muslims. Becoming independent, and especially in recent years, the Islamic government there in Algeria has not been so friendly to Christians. I think most of the Christians had to flee in the 70s for fear of being killed by terrorist organizations. And now, in 2006, they passed a law saying Christian worship is non-Muslim worship is not allowed except in a building that is so designated for such a purpose. But since 2006, the government has not designated any new buildings for that purpose. And so consequently, the Muslims who are converting to Christianity, mostly small Protestant evangelical kind of groups, are being fined and arrested and having their places of prayer shut down because they're not one of these designated places.
Mhm. Yeah. Did they shut down the basilica there?
No, I think it's just a picture they illustrate in the article. So if you're a Christian teaching the faith and someone asks you during the lesson, well, what does Christianity think about Islam and Mohammed? And you say, well, we hold that he's not a prophet of God and that he was an adulterer, a blasphemer, a pedophile, a drug addict, guilty of genocide of Jews. Well, at that point, you'd be arrested and hauled off because you've blasphemed the prophet. So this is very serious what's going on in Algeria. It shows you that countries that claim to follow a religion of peace really are quite intolerant and don't even want to admit historic truth. Now, of course, I can understand a Muslim might be upset that a Christian would qualify the behavior of the founder of his religion according to Christian morals, but you have to understand that Christians have a different criteria of morals. It's objective. It doesn't excuse the faults of anyone, even if he's famous or the leader of anything.
Yeah.
And well, our Savior didn't have any of those faults. And we think a man's admirable when he doesn't have them. We don't idealize him for having them. So it's a question of not just religion here. We're talking about civilization, okay? So if you make it a sin of blasphemy to admit that the founder of your little superstition wasn't a civilized man, well, that's retrogressive, you know, that's backward looking, that's anti-civilization, not only anti-Christian. So Algeria has some serious political issues here on human rights, and they need to get rid of that law and get rid of their blasphemy law, because to say the truth, the historical truth, is not blasphemy. And if a Christian says truth according to his belief system, you certainly shouldn't outlaw that. This is even to present from the thing that the Christianity is a truth faith, and the Algerians should understand that we believe that. So to pass laws like that is simply religious warfare in a certain sense. The irony is Algeria makes all its money selling its natural gas to Europe. So they want the Europeans' money, but they don't want to tolerate European religion. So
Yeah.
it's a real big issue. 12 churches in 2019 alone were closed by Algerian authorities. William Stark, regional manager of the International Christian Concern, writes, the closing of the latest 3 churches is the most concerning, as it came only days after members of the Église protestante d'Algérie, an umbrella organization of Protestant churches, staged a peaceful sit-in against earlier church closes, and therefore suggests that it was an act of retaliation by Algerian authorities against those Christians willing to protest. One impetus for the protests is a 2006 law stating that any non-Muslim worship be conducted in specific designated buildings. But since this law came into effect, no Christian places of worship have been designated. So the law not only requires that the building be designated, it prevents Christian worship in public places or out in the open air. I mean, talk about, control. I don't think there's any country in the West where a Muslim can't pray anywhere he wants to, as long as it's not inside a Christian building. And I have seen Muslims even pray in Christian buildings. I remember once visiting the castle at Enna in Sicily, and at noon on Sunday, there was a Muslim in the tower saying his prayers. And it was a museum. It's not a place to pray. But I guess he was inspired by the Islamic architecture because it was once an Islamic fortress. Stark of the Gatestone Institute characterizes the situation in Algeria this way. The mere existence of an open Christian minority seems to challenge Algeria's national identity as a Muslim nation. The fact that this small non-conforming minority is openly projecting its own image of what it means to be Algerian is at least part of the reason it's being targeted.
Yeah.
And he notes that Article 2 of the Algerian Constitution determines that Islam is the religion of state. So.
Yeah. Then we go to from that one to rarely reported by the media anymore. Persecution of Christians by Raymond Abrams from June 2nd, 2019. The bullet points he writes are: in 2018 alone, 1,063 attacks on Christian churches or symbols. Crucifixes, icons, statues were registered in France. I went to the police with 8 pages full of threats. The police advised me to delete my picture from my website. It's strange, isn't it? I'm not doing anything wrong. Why would I need to hide? I live in a free country. Crux
And that's
now.
someone, yeah, that's someone in the Netherlands.
An Iranian female asylum seeker was sarcastically informed in her rejection letter that you affirmed in your interview record that Jesus is your savior, but then claimed that he would not be able to save you from the Iranian regime. It is therefore considered that you have no conviction in your faith, and your belief in Jesus is half-hearted. From the Daily Mail, March 24th, 2019.
Now that is an Iranian woman attempting to get into the United Kingdom by claiming to be persecuted in Iran, and that's the response she got from the government official in the United Kingdom. So I get the impression that the government official was a Muslim because no Christian would write that sentence. Yeah. That's the logic that you find in the Islamic world. It's always twisted to put the Christian down, to put them in their place, to keep the persecution going, to turn the problem onto them, to beat them down. It's very abusive, highly psychologically manipulative, extremely cruel, and shows an endemic culture of civil rights abuse, human rights abuse, religious abuse. Let's not pretend that this Muslim in the United Kingdom picked up these ideas of abusing people from the British nation. Okay. No, he brought it with something he brought into the United Kingdom. Okay. Yeah. And this is completely outrageous what they did to that woman. But this is not the first time. I remember in 2016, one of the Christian bishops of Syria wanted to go to England and speak about the problems in Syria. And the British government wouldn't let him, saying he could be a terrorist. So,
yeah. And let's see here. When it comes to violence between Muslims and non-Muslims, March news was dominated by the Christchurch Massacre in New Zealand, where on March 15th, an Australian man killed 51 Muslims in 2 mosques. A statistical report that did some number crunching, however, found that a Christian living in a majority Muslim country is 143 times more likely to be killed by a Muslim for being a Christian than a Muslim is likely to be killed by a non-Muslim in a Western country for being what he is.
Yeah, so this report regards 2019, and this is a very polite way of saying take 143 and multiply by 51 to figure out how many Christians were murdered in 2019 by Muslims. You get, I think, if I calculate that right, you're going to get 7,000. But did you hear about that in the news in 2019?
No.
No. So this shows you how biased the media are, okay? Because the media are left-wing and their intention is to destroy Christianity. So they actually like the fact that Muslims kill Christians. That's actually pleases them. But they can't admit that because then they would expose who they really are and do that. So here's the report continues. at least 4,305 Christians were murdered by Muslims because of their faith in 2018. 300 million Christians are overwhelmingly in the majority Muslim countries are subject to violence. In France, for example, Frenchmen are exactly 10 times more likely to be murdered by a Muslim than a Muslim is likely to be killed by a non-Muslim anywhere in the world. So it's asymmetric persecution. The Christians aren't returning it, you know. The Muslims are dishing it out. Kind of like we're saying throughout the whole history. If you talk about Christian-Muslim belligerency, oh, the Crusades were cool, those 13 Crusades, but they'll never mention the thousands of jihads that killed Christians and non-Christians, and because you know you can't open the narrative to a consideration that Christians are the victims. The narrative has to always be Christians are the persecutors, because the narrative has to incite people to constantly attack Christians, who are the enemies of the journalists and the Marxists. So, but then we come to Nigeria. What's going on in Nigeria is just horrible. I know last year we were following this news very clearly, but it deserves to be everyone to be reminded what's been going on in Nigeria.
As in previous months, dozens of Christians were massacred and churches destroyed at the hands of Muslims in West African nation. A partial list follows. On March 4th, Muslims slaughtered 23 Christian villagers. It was bad, said a local in reference to the incident. Some were killed by gunshots and some by machete attacks. The displaced persons are scattered all over. 3 days later, the Muslim terrorists launched another raid in the same area, during which 3 people were killed. Commenting on the attack, a local pastor said, "Even today, they attacked. One of my members came to report that his father was killed. Another member said his son-in-law was killed." On March 11th, Muslim tribesmen slaughtered more than 70 Christians and injured 28 in another region in Kahuna State. According to eyewitnesses, the terrorists were torching houses, shooting and hacking down anything that moved. About 100 houses were destroyed in the attack. Another report noted that the victims included women and children. According to the survivors, their assailants divided into 3 groups. One group was shooting, another set fire to homes as people ran away, and the third waited in the bushes to intercept fleeing villagers.
It's absolutely diabolical how they have organized this attack. It's at the level of Nazi organization, okay? But since they're killing blacks and since they're killing Christians, the media doesn't give a care about it at all, because they don't care if blacks and Christians are killed, because they're racists and they're Marxists. And so, you know, that's why they're lauding Black Lives Matter, because they want whites and Christians to be put to death, okay? That's how much the media hates you. That's how much the mainstream media hates the people who pay the advertisers. So when you see any of these mainstream medias pushing this kind of spiel, you write down the names of the advertisers and never buy their products again, because those companies are all involved in it. It's just shocking. You see on the internet how many companies are coming out and supporting Black Lives Matters. It's just absolutely shocking. I mean, who these they're suicidal. You know, these people aren't. These companies aren't run by blacks. They're run by whites. And so if they hate America and hate Christianity that much, they should admit that publicly and let everyone divest from their corporations, you know. And this is a thing that I just don't understand. There are people listening to this program right now who have stock portfolios who invest in these companies that are pushing hate and persecution and genocide of white and black people and of Christians, but would not ever think of divesting from these corporations. You know, so you're making money off the blood of Christians, okay? If you're making money off a portfolio with them. And I think you should take a check, an ethical check on your investment strategies and divest from all these companies that are promoting these groups. Because one day these groups will come to your door and kill you, and it doesn't matter how much you invested in them.
You're listening to Ornamental Terrace Radio TV live on ordo-militaris.net. If you like what you're hearing and want to do something, I urge you to become a member of Ornamental Terrace. And if you're one of these stock investors in these big companies, pull out what you do, pull out what you're investing in, and invest with Ornamental Terrace Catholicus. There is only one organization founded to do something, and we need you to be our investors.
Yeah, Ordo Militaris Inc. could do so much within your investment. Okay, so one project we want to do is build a training camp here in North America where we can train our volunteers to defend Christians around the world, and to train American citizens on how to defend themselves individually in small groups. And if we had gotten the investment back when we were founded in 2016, we'd have a training camp up and running and be able to train 200 guys every quarter. So that would have been very important right now. And we warned everyone in 2017 and 2018 with what was going on in America that Americans need to organize training camps so that the rank and file citizen can defend against mayhem, chaos, and terrorism in the US. And people didn't take us seriously. So now, hopefully, you've opened your eyes and realize that we can't rely on the government to protect us, because the government is populated at all levels, from city mayors all the way up to Washington, with people who either are promoting the terrorism, the lawlessness, or people who are deliberately withdrawing police protection and safety and law measures and not enforcing the law, or to people who lament about it and do nothing. Okay, but in either of the three cases, you'll end up dead unless you know how to defend yourselves, and unless the men in your neighborhood know how to defend themselves and work together as a group. And to do that, you really need a training base, because there's a lot of strategy in it, and not everyone's a U.S. vet that knows these things. Okay, not everyone's been trained in this sort of thing. And this training is perfectly legal in 9 states, and our corporation is, as far as I know, the only organization on the face of the planet and in the United States actually organized to set up these kinds of training camps and to provide this kind of training so that Christians can defend themselves. We're not training vigilantes, we're training individuals who want to defend themselves, be able to defend themselves, not only individually and as groups, but also as contingents that would help the local police or the local state police in your area when they need help and need people who are trained and know how to do it. Okay, and we could establish training centers, have certification courses, and do what needs to be done, because the left is not going to roll over and die if Trump wins the election. Okay, I personally believe Trump will win the election, but they're not going to give up. Okay, if Biden wins the election, all chaos is going to break out, because they're going to let all these groups run wild. Okay, because the left now realizes they cannot win America unless they kill about a third of the population, a tenth to a third of the population. And that's what the left has done in every country where they cannot win by democratic means. So where's your training? Where's your organization? Where's your local group of volunteers ready to defend your neighborhood? Where are they? Well, they're not going to be there unless someone trains them and someone organizes them. And this is something our corporation is organized to do, not directly but indirectly, by organizing the bases, because each one of these bases has to be a separate legal entity for reasons of liability. But nevertheless, you invest with us, and we can sponsor and create these other organizations and collaborate with individuals that do. And we have a whole slew of military trainers, experts in NATO quality forces, who are ready and willing to help and train men. Okay. We have, there's a long list of properties that we could purchase if we had the money. We could purchase them tomorrow. And the amount of equipment, and we even have the individuals who are trained in building military camps that are ready to, get us up and going in 6 weeks. But we can't do it without investment. Okay, so I'm a Franciscan monk. I gave all my money to the poor following the gospel. AJ is homebound. We are zealous. We talk about this issue constantly. We're committed to it, but we don't have any money of our own to invest. Okay, so for 4 years now, we've worked without pay and without salary and, and everything to promote the order and the Order Militaris Inc. And we want to take qualified experts in finance and business and in military affairs on the board of directors and as the training individuals in these camps. We're not amateurs that want amateurs to do anything, not at all. And we're going to background checks on everyone and do everything in a very professional manner. But you can't do anything without investment. So I encourage you to come to ordo-militaris.us. Militaris is like the word military, except take off the Y and add is, and that's militaris. And Inc. Ordo Militaris means military order in Latin. And look at our investment page and look at our Y-class stock. Our Y-class stock is for setting up bases of training here in the United States. And in addition to training individuals who would come to our bases and take our courses, we could offer training to state and local police. Okay, so there's a lot we could do, but it's a private initiative. We don't accept funding from political organizations or from the government, state or federal, because we want to do this as a private organization, free of any political connections, so that we can do this as Christians and for Christians and in a Christian way. Because a Christian, there is an ethics and morals to a Christian warrior that's very essential to it. Training in the military arts is not just human skills. Christian faith must be involved because we have in our religion the highest standard of ethics that goes way beyond anything that the state or government can propose. And that's how we want our people trained, because Christianity is a religion of peace. If we train in war, it's always to defend peace and restore peace. And so we're not about chaos, we're about ending chaos. And so that's why our faith must shape everything we do. But we can't do it without your investment. So we have, I think, more than 2 million people have come to our website in the last 4 years. Okay, so there's a lot of people out there who are capable of investing, who even if they just invested a small amount, could get it off the ground. And as I'd say, if we had these kind of training camps up and running, we would have a waiting list for people getting in who wanted to take our courses. So I do believe, although I cannot make any positive future aspects, that the project would be financially viable and that we would be able to give a return on investment to our investors, because we are a for-profit corporation. We're organized in such a way that our investors and our investors alone make a return on our investments. So, and I invite you therefore to look at our investment page at ordo-militaris.us. That's militaris, like the word military, take off the Y, add an IS. And I think it will be worth your while. And it's definitely, in my opinion, of course, I'm the president of the corporation, so my point of view is colored by self-interest, I suppose you say, even though I take no salary. I think it's one of the most patriotic decisions you could make this summer as a U.S. citizen, and I encourage you on that basis.
Let's see here. On March 14th, Boko Haram jihadists attacked another predominantly Christian village. Although most people managed to flee into the bush, the jihadists killed one person, kidnapped two sisters, and burned down a church and 6 homes. A church leader said the local pastor had called him soon after the raid. I could hear desperation in his voice. He was coming out of the bush. His voice sounded completely demoralized, as he was saying, "Only God. We don't know what else to do. There's no security presence here."
It's just terrible there in Africa. And this is one thing with our T-Series stock we'd like to do, is open an office in Nigeria and help help defend and train the local population, because in many cases these people are so poor they don't even know how to defend themselves. And in almost all cases, the Muslim forces are well financed and well armed, and who's giving them the money is not clear, but they have financial and military support from them, in many cases using military equipment. So Christians, it's not equal warfare. The Christians are being persecuted because there's no one to defend them. And we'd love to go there and help them out. But that would require a whole nother series of investment. We'd found an independent company in Nigeria to do that, and we'd see to get it done. But this is something that only Christians can organize, because the governments don't want to do it. You have to understand that the only really major government, there's only two governments in West Africa are fighting, or at least helping governments against ISIS. And that is France, which is a Masonic nation and couldn't care less if Christians are exterminated, and the United States, whose intervention is very limited, and partly because they don't want the Chinese to have influence in the area, so they provide military services. But partly because it's not the kind of warfare that organized military can easily engage in, okay? You need a totally different system of defense. You can't, not an army moving around here, because the army's here and the terrorists are there. So as the army moves here, the terrorists move there. And so the army never runs into the terrorists, but the terrorists go around killing and maiming people. So you need a different kind of approach. And it is defending people on the ground, village by village, and training every village to defend themselves is the way to do it. But that takes initiative, and it's doable. The problem is solvable, but it's going to take Christians to take initiative, because these are Christians who are being killed. Okay, there are some cases where the Muslims are also attacking pagans, and pagans attack the Muslims back. But for the most part, it's Christians, and especially in Kaduna State of Nigeria.
Yeah. The military experts we have ready to train folks, if France would allow their guys who are going to help train us be unleashed. I've seen their training videos. If they allow these men who want to help us to do what is needed to be done, as brother mentioned, the threat would be over quickly.
Mm-hmm. Would be quickly. So yeah, we have, I think, six or eight members, former members of the French Foreign Legion, military trainers who could serve with us in Africa. Would be excellent, because they've been trained for that kind of desert warfare. And I think a Christian defense force would add wonders to the morale of the Christians of West Africa, and show them that their faith should teach them to defend themselves and give them hope, and not just constantly be slaughtered without any intervention. And I'm not saying this is the cause of the problem, but you have to understand that the nations where this persecution is taking place in West Africa, Nigeria, Niger, Chad, Mali, they all have Muslim governments. And so they're trying to do the best what they could do, but they have the difficulty of, if they're too strong against Muslim radicals, it makes them look like they're, against Islam. And Christian minorities in those countries aren't really willing to trust so much in the government, because there's a lot of lower level government workers who secretly support these terrorist groups. Okay. So that's where these terrorist groups are getting military hardware from. There's not Christian nations there. Okay. So the Christians really have no one to advocate for them, even though in all the governments, the national leaders are opposed to terrorism and want to do what they can, and certainly would like more help to do it. But there's just, what the help they can get from France and the United States is only going to have limited effect, because it's not the same thing as training your people to defend yourself. Okay. And so they need some kind of an NGO that's willing to go over there. And there is no NGO that does this kind of work. Most private military corporations, because Militaris is a private military corporation. If they undertook any contracts, it would be at the, you know, they'd be paying each of their guys 250,000. No. So our trainers are willing to work for as low as 36,000 a year. So they're really committed to fighting terrorism. They're committed to helping people, and they're not out for just absolute gain. So I think a Christian organization could do wonders there in West Africa and show everyone, Christian, Muslim alike, that there's a way to solve this, and the Christian faith can play an important role in doing it, and private NGO can really help out.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another one of these Gatestone reports about Nigeria, how one of the Muslim governments are using military aircraft on Christians. Oh, yeah.
There's problems all across Africa. You have the Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a group there called Allied Democratic Forces that has Islamic groups in it that are going around and killing Christians. 6 Christians, including 3 women and a 9-year-old child, were killed last year in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they're being supported by Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda. And Ethiopia, churches have been attacked by Muslim organizations. Ethiopia is about 2/3 Christian and 1/3 Muslim, and they're having a lot of problems with terrorism there. And the people are so poor they have no way to defend themselves. So in 2018, 19 churches were torched in Ethiopia. So there's a lot of threat in the countryside there, and not much effort to do with the government of Ethiopia's Marxists. I think they get a lot of financial help from China, although recently I think there's been a change of government and it's going to be more friendly and open to the West. But there's no NGO there that's helping the people defend themselves. Of course, there's no NGO in the world that helps people defend themselves. As far as I know, there's maybe one group run by an American in Iraq that does some training. It's a non-profit, but in the Sudan is one of the most unfriendly places. Yeah, that's the country where the central government is bombing people in the hill countries there,
Yeah.
who are in the Nuba Mountains, who are Christians, partly Christian. That part of the population is Christian, part is pagan, and the government regularly bombs their habitations. It's considered the 6th worst nation in the world to be a Christian, and
yeah, we talked about on one of our old shows on what would help the prices of military equipment. Let me just say, if we had to just create an air force, it would be expensive, folks.
Yeah, we occasionally have Air Force guys contact us. They say you'd like to do air operations, but you know, a single plane costs tens of millions of dollars, even in the cheapest, oldest version. The newer ones cost hundreds of millions. So no, we're not going to be involved in air things. So our training would teach people to use regular standard guns that are available in local markets, and strategy and tactics, organization and discipline, you know, the basic skills. Because at present, no one's helping these people. And I mean, you have terrorist groups like in Algeria that the president praises as true sons of Islam. We won't even talk about the problems in Germany last year. I think in 2018, 1,063 attacks were against Christian churches or symbols in France alone. And in 2019, in the southern part of Germany, more than 200 churches were attacked. And the attacks in both these countries are not coming from only Muslims. A lot of them in France are coming from radical Marxist groups that just hate Christianity because they want their own perverse moral agenda in politics.
Let's see. Oh, Kazakhstan. Bishop Snyder.
Yeah, Kazakhstan. Well, since 2011, when the government introduced a new religion law, Christians have faced heightened restrictions on meetings and missionary activities, according to a separate report by Barnabas Fund. To obtain registration, churches in Kazakhstan are required to provide names and addresses of at least 50 members. Kazakhstan is officially a secular state with 70% of the population Muslim, 26% Christian. Christians are mostly from a Russian background, and some are ethnic Kazakhs who have converted from Islam. Protestant Christians, and especially those from a Muslim background, are viewed with great distrust. So 2 churches were raided there and shut down. So yeah, but it's not only in the Mideast. Look at that story from the Netherlands. See that?
Yeah. It's there. As evidence that Christian refugees in the country are being threatened or bullied on a regular basis, especially when they used to be Muslims. The March 14th report recounted the experience of 3 such Christian refugees. Directly after my conversion to Christianity in 1999, after reading the Netherlands, Pradoon Fawad from Iraq received the first threats. People who I thought were my friends became my enemies. Even Muslims who are not very conservative told my wife that they would kill me. I am still getting threats every single day. After my conversion to Christianity, the threats started, said Esther Mulder, whose Muslim family fled Somalia. Mulder. Sounds Czech.
Mulder. She probably married a Dutchman.
Most of the time they're coming from the other Somalis. They write to me in Somali, so no one else is able to understand what they're saying. We once posted on Facebook a picture of a Somali conference where everyone was standing in front of the cross. People didn't like it, and we received several threats. I was really sorry about that. When Mulder visits her family, my father leaves the house. The last thing he ever said to me is that I'm no longer his daughter.
Yeah, the vicious level of bigotry in the Islamic world is unbelievable. But it's because Christianity convicts Muslims as being part of a superstition and not a real religion, because Christianity is a religion of salvation, whereas Islam is a religion of submit or we'll kill you. So it's not really a religion, it's really a system of political control. So anyone who converts from Islam to Christianity gets threatened by Muslims all around the world, wherever they go, which is why so many of them flee to the West. But when the West opens its doors to Muslims who want to promote Islam, then these people fleeing here are still threatened too. So the persecution is not only in Islamic nations, it's anywhere there are Muslims, because the Islamic religion, by its nature, teaches its members to persecute other people, most especially Muslims who convert to Christianity or another religion.
Read the one about Jassim. He blows the whistle on Muhammad.
Yeah, Jassim from Morocco. In 2015, I became a Christian. My mother taught me to respect everyone and to be kind. That was in stark contrast to what Islam was teaching me. I had to hate and curse Jews and Christians. Mohammed was my big role model, but his life was bad. He killed Jews and married a girl of 6 years old. How could he be my role model? Due to the large volume of threats he was getting, I went to the police with 8 pages full of threats, with documents showing 8 pages worth of threats. The police advised me to delete my pictures from my website. It's strange, isn't it? I'm not doing anything wrong. Why would I need to hide? And this is in the Netherlands. I live in a free country. I guess he should have put a question mark on that sentence. Do I live in a free country? Yeah. So I've seen even in the United States threats against our account with Order Militaris.
Mm-hmm.
And we were threatened by a group out of Turkey. One guy threatened to lop off the heads of all our members worldwide. I reported it to Twitter. They didn't do anything about it. So I went to the local police and I reported to them. Even they were reluctant to do anything about it after I insisted that I filed a complaint with the FBI against Twitter on the grounds that Twitter not taking down the threat was promoting terrorism. Twitter, 8 weeks later, took down the threat, and 2 weeks after that, suspended our account because they didn't like the fact that we went to the police against what they were doing to promote terrorism.
Yeah.
And they sent me a pathetic email months later saying, please come back, please come back. No, Twitter is a bunch of radical Marxists who promote terrorism and knowing it promote terrorism. And if you're on Twitter and see anyone Muslim threaten anyone, report it to the FBI, but make the complaint not only against the account that made the threats, make the complaint against Twitter, who's not even following its own rules and should eliminate those kinds of threats from its platform. Okay, it's absolutely ridiculous. So the terrorism is being promoted not just in Islamic countries, even Europe, but even in the United States, because this was in the United States, and Twitter was allowing a threat to come all the way from Turkey. And they're saying, oh no, you misunderstand these people. They're not being serious. I said, well, when they quote the actual words of the Sultan at the Battle of Lepanto saying, I'm going to lop off all your heads, I think he's being serious.
Yeah. There's even war in Afghanistan, which we pray for the First Lady of Afghanistan, who's a Catholic too.
Yeah,
Living in a dangerous
Jahan.
place.
Yeah, well, Afghan is dangerous for many reasons, but if you convert to Christianity in Afghanistan, your days are numbered. And it's considered the second worst persecuted Christians in the world. I think the first is Pakistan.
A former Islamic child soldier, Jahan, 24 now, who converted to Christianity despite threats to his life, said he was taught to kill people who were Christian because they were infidels and no good. He eventually, however, began reading the Bible for himself, an experience he described as eye-opening. He discovered that what he had been taught about Christians and Christianity was wrong, and he eventually converted, only to flee from his family, who threatened to kill him when he heard about his new faith. According to the reports, persecution in Afghanistan is extreme for the country's tiny Christian community. Most Afghani Christians are converts from Islam and face extremely real and extremely deadly threats because of their conversion. In some cases, Christian converts are attacked by their own family, who are ashamed that one of their own has become a Christian.
I would say that this young man is an absolute hero to have gone from being a child soldier to someone and who was told and maybe even participating in killing Christians, to someone who had the integrity to open a Bible and read it and become a Christian is just absolutely astounding. It shows how in the most darkest regions, the faith and the light of Christ can shine, and that there's honest and upright people in every nation and every language. But who's going to defend these people when they're persecuted? Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Afghanistan has probably gotten more foreign aid from Russia and the United States than its entire national economy could pay back in 10,000 years. They should at least promote the defense of Christian rights. There's so much chaos in the country. Maybe if the government even wanted to do it, they can't do it. But it shows you the endemic deep prejudice in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was once a Buddhist country until Islam arrived and probably did to the Buddhists what they do to the Christians.
Yeah. So good job, Jahan. And also, you must remember the First Lady of Afghanistan as well. Last I heard, she was still Christian.
God protect her.
Let's see here. Kenya.
Yeah, the sad case of a Christian pastor, his name is Abdul, and he started a Christian church on the outskirts of Garissa in Kenya, and Muslims were converting. So one day, coming back from one of the gatherings at his church, a group of Muslims attacked him with wooden clubs and beat him to unconsciousness, and breaking his what did they broke his thigh bone,
Ooh.
and he was covered with pain all over his body, especially the waist, the back, and the left leg near the ankle. He had to flee to another town for fear he'd be put to death. And now, injured as he is, he has to support his wife and 3 children.
Pakistan. No. A mentally ill Christian man was apprehended for blasphemy. Stephen Mashat was arrested after Muhammad Rafiq and Muhammad Imran told Muhammad Mudassir, a renowned Hazif, one who has memorized the entire Quran, that the Christian had made derogatory remarks against the Prophet Muhammad. PBUH. The report states Stephen, 38, is unmarried and lives with his mother and sister after contracting typhoid fever as a child and receiving little medical attention due to his family's poverty. The family noticed changes in his behavior. He was eventually taken to a doctor who declared him mentally disabled. On March 10th, Stephen got into a loud quarrel with his mother and sister. Female Muslim neighbors soon got involved, and before long, a few Muslim men pulled Stephen out of his house, started beating him brutally, gradually joined by others. Police eventually arrived and arrested Mashhad based on testimony of the local cleric. Afterwards, his sister Aliyah went to the police station. She says their brother only shouted and used abusive language against the local ladies, but did not utter any derogatory remarks against the Prophet Muhammad. But the police didn't believe her. If convicted, Stephen could face the death penalty. According to the Section 295C of Pakistan's Penal Code, whoever by words, either spoken or written, or by visible representation, or by any imputation, innuendo, or insinuation, directly or indirectly defiles the sacred name of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, shall be punished with death or imprisonment for life, and shall also be liable to fine.
Yeah, yeah, they don't even know what the word sacred means. Yeah. So Pakistan is terrible. To show you how deep the persecution is in Pakistan, a poor, a Catholic man in Pakistan who runs a private school for Catholic children, and this school is so poor that the walls are made of mud, the roof is made of like rickety wood, tin sheet. The kids sit on the dirt for their lessons. He wrote our order asking for help. Okay, and I said, well, you have to send me a copy, a printed copy, so I can verify it's you. So he spent the little money he had. He had this thing printed all up. He put it in an envelope and he mailed it to us. It arrived like 3 months later because someone in the post office in Pakistan threw it in the water. And when all the ink had dissolved off of it, then he dried it out and he mailed it to us so that only the address was legible. When I opened it up, none of the pages were legible. That's how vicious the persecution is in Pakistan. And it is institutionalized. It's even in their post office. So I told the man, don't write because he had contacted me electronically. I said, don't write me again. You put your life in danger if there's that much persecution in your country, that they're willing to do that to mail sent to us. So that is someone in the post office who saw the address, Googled who we were, saw what organization is about, and then purposely decided to destroy that mail in a way in which they could say, oh, it got caught in the rain.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we won't even talk about the practice in Pakistan of kidnapping women, raping them, and then forcing them to become your wives. Thing that Muslims do against Christian women, even when the Christian women are already married. And that happened at last to Naveed Iqbal when he tried to get his wife back.
Oh.
To get the perp arrested and his wife freed, he had to threaten to burn himself alive in front of the police station. And that was the only reason they decided to act. I guess they didn't want bad publicity. He finally got his wife delivered after making a pathetic video explaining the crimes and the torture she was subject to. It's so bad in Pakistan that if you go to a well and there's a glass there that people use to drink from, and you're a Christian and you drink from it, you can be beaten to death. Why? Because that's a glass that only the lips of a Muslim can touch, and you as a Christian, you're unclean. I mean, that's the level of prejudice we're at. You know, it was all this civil rights movement in the United States because blacks had to sit in the back of the bus or something, and not eat with whites at the same kind of diners. But who's advocating for these Christians being persecuted around the world?
No one.
Well, not the Marxists who are in control of our media in the West, no. The fact that our media doesn't talk about shows you that they're controlled by Marxists. And if you are supporting financially any media outlet that doesn't talk about the persecution of Christians, then you're probably supporting a Marxist outlet, you know. So yeah, change your practices, because the more we support those who are silent in the face of Christian persecution, the more persecution will go on.
Yeah. Like I said yesterday, regarding that tweet by President Trump. Oh yeah, there is a war on Christianity, sir. But it doesn't have to do with just toppling of statues in America. That's nothing. Those things can be replaced. Human lives can't.
Mm-hmm. Human lives can't. Well, the Supreme Court, many of whose members were appointed by Trump, passed a law claiming that you're a different gender is just as valid a claim for civil rights as having black skin. That is not only racist, that's anti-Christian, because now Christians can't express themselves in the United States on that by their employment decisions. So yeah, there's a war on Christianity, and you're on the wrong side of the fence, Mr. President. Okay. Yeah. Why shut down the country, shut down Christian churches, shut down Christian choirs? There is a war on Christianity, and who shut them? Who was involved in attacking Christianity this spring in the United States? It wasn't Barack Obama, okay? It was you, Mr. President, who shut down the country for a flu that's no more dangerous than any other winter flu. Destroyed the national economy and made it illegal to be a Christian.
No matter
yeah, there's a war on Christianity.
Yeah. Don't believe everything you hear from Taylor Marshall. Sure, he makes pretty good fancy looking videos, but you'll never touch on this.
No, it's just common sense. I mean, you have to judge someone by their deeds, not by the words. So judge him by deeds and not by his tweets, okay? I mean, it's great that you could talk about what's doing right. I mean, it's like Cardinal Burke. Cardinal Burke will tell you, oh, everything that's wrong with Bergoglio. But will he do anything about it? No. And people think he's the end all, the most conservative cardinal, the real fighter, the real warrior. I don't know where these people are confusing a video game with reality. In a video game, the real warrior does things, but it's in an unreal world. It has no effect. Cardinal Burke and Trump, who can talk about a lot of things, well, at least Trump does something. Cardinal Burke does nothing. These people aren't warriors for Christianity. They're not out to defend Christians. Okay, in many cases, they're doing nothing to prevent the persecution of Christians. So why praise them as your heroes? You have something wrong with you mentally if you think that they're your heroes. You know, don't get me wrong. I'm not in favor of Biden. I'm not in favor of the communists, but we need better. We don't get better defenders of Christianity than that, more militant men. That's the end of us, okay? And people who don't think so, they're part of the problem too. So we have to be very realistic and very realistic in the sense of we have to recognize reality for what it is.
Yeah.
We have to recognize that the political narrative is to suppress a Christian reaction to the problems of the world, to prevent us from applying the true solutions to all problems in the world, in history, in society, and among nations. Because only Christians can apply the true solutions, because only we have the true light and the true Savior. And all this, the rest of this stuff is a narrative control to prevent that reaction. It's profoundly Masonic, it's profoundly Marxist, it's profoundly secularist. And you got to snap out of it. That's why initiatives like Ordo Militaris Radio TV is so important, because we red pill you here. We're going to tell you frankly what's really going on. Okay, we're not into the Lululand make-believe world. Oh, I got a tweet from the president, you know, but I don't advocate anyone. Just, you know, or these other talking heads. It's like, give me money, give me money. I'm being persecuted. Give me money, give me money. And it goes to them to buy their $1 million house in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Egypt. On Sunday, March 17th, the ruling court in Minia surprised the Coptic Christian community by recusing itself and stepped down from two ongoing cases concerning victimization and killing Christians. Due to this unexpected move, both cases, which had already been at the court for 3 to 6 years, must now be retried anew, a process that will likely take several more years.
Yeah, a little underhanded trick, you know. Instead of handing down justice, just retire.
Yeah, see that first case?
Yeah, so Soad Fabet, a 70-year-old Coptic Christian grandmother. On May 20th, 2016, a mob of 300 Muslim men descended on her home, stripped her completely naked, beat, spit on her, paraded her in the streets nude to jeers, whistles, and triumphant shouts of Allahu Akbar. They were angry because her son was allegedly involved with a Muslim woman. The second case goes back to July 13, when General Abdel Fattah Sisi ousted then President Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood after massive popular demonstrations against Morsi. Then Brotherhood sympathizers all around Egypt rioted, mostly targeting Coptic Christian people, homes, and especially churches. Almost 100 churches were set ablaze or destroyed. During these rampages, rioters randomly killed an elderly Coptic man, Iskandar, or Alexander, and dragged his body on the ground to jeers and more cries of Allahu Akbar. His corpse was then hurled into a garbage bin. For 3 days, his children were prevented from retrieving it from burial. An unknown person eventually buried Iskander in an unmarked grave. His relentless murderers found the grave, exhumed the mangled body, propped it up, and used it for target practice. That's the Coptics are one of the most peaceful people, and they're brutally persecuted in Egypt. as many as maybe a quarter of the population of Egypt is Coptic Christian. So the Muslims are very afraid of the Coptics because more and more Muslims are converting and becoming Copts. The Copts have big families, and they see that their religion is powerless before the power of Christ and his religion. And so they lash out constantly against Copts. This is only one of 10,000 incidents against Copts in Egypt.
In both the cases of the Christian woman and the slaughtered Christian man, the names and faces of the assailants and murderers are well known. Commenting on the recusal, Adil Guhindi of Coptic Solidarity told Gatestone, the judiciary system in Egypt, as well as the rest of the pillars of the state, often referred to as the deep state, have become impregnated with the fundamentalist Islamic ideology and are thus decidedly biased against Copts. The political leadership of the country takes no concrete corrective measures, and worse still, lets this ideology shape and dominate the society through education and media. Where have I heard that before?
Yeah, sounds like the United States, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's why when you, if you familiarize yourself, I'm speaking to the listeners here, if you familiarize yourself on a weekly basis through a program like what we're doing this Monday and every Monday, Order Militaris Radio TV, with how Christians are being persecuted around the world, then it helps you understand what's going on in the United States right now and why the media is promoting Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Burn down black neighborhoods, burn down churches, and destroy Christian monuments. It's the same modus operandi.
Of course, they're the same group. I mean, Black Lives Matter is Islamist, as you found out today.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, we get to Great Britain.
Yeah, where Muslims have totally infiltrated the administration, the public administration of the government. So you try to get into the country claiming to be a Christian refugee, and they'll say, ask you, are you a member of a peaceful religion? Because Islam claims to be peaceful, so they're always attacking Christians. The Christian will say yes, and then they'll say, give us a copy of what you believe in. The Christian hands over a Bible, and then the Muslim will say, well, there's passages in this Bible that are full of death, destruction, and violence, so you don't really belong to a peaceful religion like Islam. The irony is, yeah, the irony is the Quran is full of mass murders and other kinds of infamous crimes. To claim that that book is a book of peace is ridiculous.
I
The violence in, yeah, go ahead.
I wonder what would happen if I sat across the table with triple lions and my uncle, Richard the Lionheart.
Yeah, if there's violence in the Bible, it's because the Bible has historical books and recounts what happened. And to tell the history of what happened, there's nothing wrong with this. The Bible isn't like YouTube. There's a great series on YouTube about the First World War called The Great War. They lost, I think, 2/3 of their videos one day because YouTube said, you can't show videos with dead bodies in them.
Uh-huh.
How could you tell the history of the First World War without dead bodies? I mean, talk about the absolute psychopathy of YouTube. But the Bible will tell you the truth. It will tell you what happened and how it happened. That doesn't mean it approves of the violence. It just tells the history, okay? Because that's truth, okay? So Christians are willing to admit the truth, even if it's ugly. But neither Marxists or Muslims admit the truth of all things. Just some of them, they just want to censor. So this person's petition for asylum in the UK was denied because they said the Bible was inconsistent with their claim that Christianity was a peaceful religion. The second is even more outrageous. So this woman from Iran, her rejection letter said to her, when rejecting her claim for asylum in the United Kingdom, you affirmed in your asylum interview record that Jesus is your savior, but then claimed that he would not be able to save you from the Iranian regime. It is therefore considered that you have no conviction in your faith and your belief in Jesus is half-hearted. Can you imagine? So the Muslim will go so far as to set himself up over the Christian to be the judge of his religious belief. Talk about the arrogance, okay? The arrogance. Whoever signed that letter should be bounced right out of public administration and back to the country he came from, okay? But it's because that's a mentality that you would find nowhere in the West. It's not, no one in the West would write such a sentence. It's completely outrageous.
Yeah. The lady goes on, discussing her experiences. The woman said, "When I was in Iran, I converted to Christianity. The situation changed and the government were looking for me. I had to flee from Iran. In my country, if someone converts to Christianity, their punishment is death or execution. Concerning the asylum process, she said that whenever she responded to her Home Office interviewer, she had a phone call with the person. He was either chuckling or maybe just kind of mocking when he was talking to me. He asked me why Jesus didn't help you from the Iranian regime or Iranian authorities. So she knows the person's voice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And we have to thank, we have been reading from a report by Raymond Ibrahim, author of the new book, Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West. He is a distinguished senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and a Judith Rosen Friedman Fellow at the Mideastern Forum. I gather he is Jewish and not a Christian, and but whatever the case, he's doing some excellent work as a journalist in documenting the persecution of Christians around the world.
yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't publish anything today, so look forward to that for next Monday.
The
Hopefully.
Gatestone Institute, you can find these articles by him at gatestoneinstitute.org. That's GATESTONE institute.org. And subscribe to the newsletter. It's a very good organization support. They make known, I think, they don't just cover persecution of Christians, they cover violation of human rights, don't they? I think that's pretty much.
They cover it all.
Mm-hmm. And they're headquartered. I want to see what they're headquartered. They don't list their address because they're afraid of being persecuted. See, they're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. They're in the United States, somewhere. I guess they're smart. They've been threatened too many times to put their contact information down.
You'll love these reports, folks. They are amazing, eye-opening. If YouTube don't like them, they're good.
Mm-hmm. And but I would point out here, journalists, even excellent journalists who tell us what's going on, that's just the first step. But that doesn't solve the problem. There has to be a response. If we just listen to the news of persecution and we don't do anything about it, we are even more guilty in the sight of God, okay? Because we have to come to the aid of our brother in need. And one of the points that I like pointing out is that in the Gospels, I think Jesus Christ talks about this, because he gives the parable of the man going down to Jericho who's beaten up on the road and dumped on the side. And a priest and Levite come by and they don't help him, but a Samaritan helps him. But what most people don't realize is that road is the road that goes from Jerusalem down to Saudi Arabia, okay? So I think Christ is telling us in a parable, he saw 2,000 years in the future and said, look, Christians are going to be persecuted. You have to help them when you know that they've been persecuted. You cannot just walk by them, okay? And he's rebuking chiefly the religious ministers of his day, but probably of all time, because this is something that should be talked about in the pulpit regularly, okay? And Catholic, Protestant, Christian ministers do not talk about this, and they should. We as Christians have a duty to defend Christians who are being persecuted. And the purpose of a church isn't to take all its money and stuff it in the pockets of the people in the church, okay? The church is there to serve Christians, okay, especially needy Christians. And the greatest need is security and defense for people who are persecuted, okay?
Yeah.
And there are many organizations to help them with food, clothing, and legal affairs. But there are precious few or none other than Ordo Militaris Inc. or Ordo Militaris Catholicus, which are organized and dedicated to helping them with security and defense.
Yeah. In the book on becoming soldiers of the cross again, what I did was, since we were using Raymond's reports almost daily on Blog Talk Radio, I was like, put them in the pews in the chapel there. And then
you put Raymond in the pews in your novel?
oh, yeah, I put reports in that he did in the novel, and in the pews, and the guy's like,
Okay, good. That is a way to lionize him, immortalize him in your novels. AJ is talking about on becoming soldiers of the cross again. It's historical fiction. It's an ebook. You can get it from ordo-militaris.us. Militaris is spelled like the word military, but take off the Y and add IS. And you can get it for $10, download it, and all the proceeds go to our work in helping persecuted Christians. Neither AJ and I get a salary. We work for free. This is an apostolate. So get a copy of the book. It's a great read for young people. And he signed over all the royalties to the corporation, and it's been very popular. We've had people all around the world get copies of it, from Australia to, I think, Finland, and throughout Europe and North America, and even in Latin America. So it's a great read. It's turned out to be very popular, and
yeah.
so I encourage.
And there's a question people keep asking me: when is it going to be in book form?
Yeah. Well, actually printing it. To print a book in a cost-effective way, you have to print at least 3,000 copies, and that takes some capital. So that would take like 20,000 capital. So no, we're not there. But if someone wants to invest with Ordo Militaris so we can print the book, and we will arrange some kind of profit sharing to reward you for tying up your capital for maybe 5 years or 10 years to sell all the copies, because it'll take a while to sell books. People should read books, okay? They're excellent ways. You don't need to plug them into the wall. You don't have to worry about staying charged. You don't need a cell phone account. You can read them in most kinds of lights, and you can take them with you. You can get them wet. You can write in them, and you can find the page again. And so they're excellent instruments of study and reading. And reading a book can change your life, which no website will ever do.
Yeah. So if you want to take what I did by putting some of the reports about Iraqi Christians that we were reading at the time, like I did into the book, and Raymond makes sure you can use his reports because he doesn't put that copyright thing below. Print them off, put them in your pews.
Or at least put them on the bulletin board in the foyer. So a lot could be done, but there's so much information in his reports that a good preacher should be able to weave some of it into a homily. And because Christians should be militant in the works of charity, and security and defense is the greatest work of charity for the needy. And so this has been a great weekly report, AJ. I hope it opens people's eyes, and as we document from week to week what's going on, raise the issues. We used to do this all on Twitter, but Twitter has become such a hostile environment that we don't waste our time with it. But If you like this audio and video, tweet links out to it and share it so that people get to know what is happening, what's going on, what we would like to do about it, and how they can help. Because the message does need to get out, and so that's an important message, whether you share it on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or Telegram.
Oh. Tomorrow's program. What is groupthink? And we have we're not going to mention his name, but yeah, we got a weird, nasty response from a fellow Catholic, and then, like, we need to do a show on it. I was like, okay. So I looked up the term. I was like, groupthink. It's pretty CIA, MK Ultra type stuff. So
Well, let's talk about it tomorrow. And that's not
yeah.
we could start talking about oodles on that topic. Okay. I'm glad and honored to have been on the show this week, AJ. Thank you very much for your invitation.
You're welcome. This is Order Terrace Radio signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.